Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel and welcome to another virtual design episode. Today we're talking about a dining room in a new build that could definitely use some character. It's actually my friend's dining room. I went over to her house, took some photos so that I could share with you guys because I'm still playing with the idea of these episodes. So I still wanted a little bit of a warm up. I think this dining room is super relatable whether you live in a rental like me or you own your space. I think that oftentimes, especially currently where we are, there's a lot of us living in newer spaces. I find that these can be some of the most challenging to kind of bring in that warmth and character. So I'm super excited about this episode. So without further ado, let's just get right into the video. I'm gonna pull up the image of my friend's dining room. You guys are gonna see it on the screen. I don't have all the fancy editing programs, so we're going with it. I went over to her house and I took a photo of her dining room, which is essentially a little nook off of her kitchen. So as you can see here, it's pretty much square. I find personally, dining rooms, if they're not done correctly, they can oftentimes feel too fancy where you can't really go into them. You don't want to touch them. They just look too neat. Or they can kind of veer completely on the opposite end where they are almost too cluttery, they're repelling in both ends, either too fancy or too, your dining room catches all your paperwork and all your things. So I think what we're gonna do today is talk about how you could really create something that feels very inviting and comfortable and somewhere you wanna hang out and somewhere you wanna be. Instead of eating at the kitchen island or even in your living room, I wanna create a space that you want to eat at, that you want to be in, that you wanna play games and sit around the table and have conversations. That is ultimately my goal for every space, for my spaces, to help you with your spaces. I think that is something that we all are looking for. It's even beyond the pretty things, it's about the feeling. So this dining room, as you can see, it's in this square. I took it on a wide angle lens, so it's kind of hard to tell, but it's definitely very square in there. And it is this little nook, which I think can feel like a warm hug if you bring in the right pieces to make it feel that way. Now, what I find super challenging is that there's no windows on the wall and you have to come up with either whether that's a mirror or artwork or something on the wall to really kind of absorb the echo, absorb the sterileness. You wanna warm it up in a way that feels very like you wanna be in there, almost like a living room. You want to be in there and enjoy the space. Right off the bat, the first thing that I would do to a space like this is I would add paneling to the wall. The reason why I think this space in particular needs paneling is because I feel like it's open, but it's also a nook, and it's going to create this separation from the other space, even though it's an open concept. By adding the paneling, it kind of makes it feel like its own room, even though it's completely open. It's gonna make it feel warm, it's gonna absorb the sterile, the echo, it's going to add detail to an otherwise just blank canvas, and it's really going to help warm it up. You could also add wallpaper if paneling isn't your thing, but for me, I think it would be really beautiful for some vertical paneling on these three walls, and I just think that would really, really take it up majorly in this space. I just think, again, adding something that makes it feel separate, but also, threads and also as a flow from room to room is going to really highlight this space in the most comforting way. So after adding paneling to this space, I think what that also does is help with the walls. Right now, you kind of feel like you need to put something on all three walls because it's kind of like, whoa, this is so empty. It needs something, but paneling is going to add that texture where you may or may not have to add stuff to every single wall. That's another major plus to paneling and wallpaper is it helps fill up the space with detail where you might not need artwork or you might not need sconces or mirrors or whatever. It's really gonna help fill out that space in a very effortless way. So the other thing I would really love to do to this space to help warm it up is change out the light fixtures. Now for me, I love layered lighting, and I would not only want to get rid of these two recessed lights on the ceiling by adding either one chandelier or one pendant light or two pendant lights depending on the table that you go for. I also would love to add either sconces or a lamp in here just to add a little bit more of that warmth, because when you're using your pendant light, you're really only going to use that, I think, when you're eating in there. And I would also make sure it's put on a dimmer. So if you're playing games in there or sitting around the table chatting with friends, you can lower the light and really create that mood for that space, and again, want to be in there and want to enjoy that space with friends and family. Definitely swap out these recessed lights for pendant lights or a chandelier. And again, I think depending on what type of table you go for is gonna determine the type of lighting that you're gonna go for. And then I would really love to add some sconces on the wall depending on the other pieces that we bring in and how that would kind of fill out the space. But I think that's another really great way to add that layered light. So you have the top light, you have the mid light, and then you're gonna have a little bit of a lower light with the lamp, whether it's on a credenza, a sideboard, you know, whatever else you have in here, adding those different layers. And you can have them on if you're visiting friends, talking with friends, and have all those different layers. It's just gonna create this vibe that makes you want to stay in there for many hours. Like I said, enjoying a cocktail, playing games with friends, eating your dinner. It's gonna create kind of more of that restaurant vibe. If you ever go to a restaurant that really is maybe more of a higher end, or a restaurant that really kind of captures that lighting, you will find that it makes you feel like you're walked in with a warm hug is the best way I can describe it. And I definitely think you can create that in your own home. Okay, so now we're gonna move on to the fun stuff. We're gonna move on to the accessories. And because we dealt with the bones, we dealt with the paneling on the wall that's gonna really help fill in some detail, fill in some, it's gonna like drown out the noise a little bit, the echo, and the lighting, that's gonna create the mood, that's gonna really set the tone for the rest of the space. Now we get to pick out all the pretty things. Now we're gonna move on to the mood board of the space. Now, as I mentioned, this is my friend's dining room, so I kind of already know where this space is going. I have already kind of put together the mood board for the space, and we do have one piece of furniture that we know is going into the space. First, I wanna say this room, being that it's square, I personally would put a round table in there just to mix up the shape. It's a square room, everything's really square. We were putting a hutch in there, which is rectangle. Adding that round shape is really going to feel a little bit more thought out. It's going to really balance very nicely. And I think when you're designing a space, paying attention to the shape of the items that you're bringing in there and trying to mix that up a little bit really does help with the overall design. However, that being said, there's a rectangle dining room table going in here. Talking to my friend, they just think for their lifestyle, they want a rectangle dining table, excuse me, which is totally fine as well. And we're gonna go over how I would design the space with that rectangle. But I still wanted to point out the different shapes because I think it's crucial in design and something that could very easily be something that you could pay attention to when designing your space. I do know that there's going to be a raw wood hutch going in here. I personally would put that raw wood hutch on the left side because when you walk in from the front door, that would be one of the first things that you see. I'd put it on that far left wall because if you can see right here where the light switch is and the little screen, that comes from the hallway. So it's like this beautiful hutch filled with beautiful china and dinnerware is gonna greet you, and it's gonna feel very inviting right away. You could also put it on the other wall if you want a little bit more of a surprise. So it kind of seems like you're walking into the room, you think you see it all, then you turn and you see this beautiful hutch. I think overall it's just kind of the first impression you want to create to a space, and that could go with artwork, it could go with anything that you're putting into a room. Two ways that I would do this dining room is I would either mix up the tones because you have the raw wood hutch. Doing a darker dining room table is going to bring in another layer of tone and color. So doing something more like a walnut, like a dark table would be really beautiful. Or you could do another like vintage raw wood and bring in those tones, whether that's in the rug, the dining chairs, the light fixture, in other ways. I think at this point, it just depends on preference. In the mood board, I do have a dark table and light chairs. The more I think about it though, the more I think I would want to kind of go lighter in this space. And I would want to do another raw wood, like vintage round table with linen chairs, like what I'm sitting in right now. To me, think that that feels a little bit more like a living room, and it feels a little bit more inviting and like you want to be in there. However, I do realize putting linen chairs in a dining room can feel a bit scary because, you know, if you spill food on the chair or whatnot, but you can spray it with protector and clean your chairs if, you know, if that doesn't scare you. And then the other way that I would warm this space up is by adding, I personally love adding a natural texture into every space. So for me, I would want to put like a sisal rug in there. You could also layer a vintage rug over top of this if you wanted to add in a little bit more pattern, color, and layers to the space. But in the mood board, I do just have a sisal rug. Now, I personally feel like adding in something more natural texture really does add warmth and it makes it feel very inviting. It's something about a natural material to me. It's kind of like, it's just extremely approachable and it feels like it's a little less serious. So that's why I love a sisal rug in the dining room. Now this sisal rug is from Crate & Barrel. I've used this in a dining room for one of my client projects and I love it. I love this rug. Now if you wanted pattern and a little bit more texture, but you didn't want two rugs and you wanted one alone, I would do something like the diamond jute or the square kind of jute. I'll put pictures of those on the screen. And I think that this kind of marries the two ideas together. Sisal rug, vintage rug on top. But if you didn't want to, you know, go that route or even save money, doing a patterned jute could kind of still give a little bit more interest to the space. Now for the light fixtures, if I were to do a round table, I would just cap off one of those can lights and do a single pendant over top. Now to really warm up this space, I think it would be so beautiful to add in a light fixture that has lampshades. Like I'll put a picture on the screen. It's hard to explain sometimes, but adding in the light fixture with the lampshade, again, makes it feel very inviting. It kind of feels like a living room. And the thing about a living room is it's almost like a no-brainer. Like you go in there, you hang out, you feel comfortable, it feels inviting. And I think that's what can be missing in a dining room. However, if you make it feel like an extension of your home and it has more of those living room elements, to me, that's what makes it extremely inviting to go into and makes you want to hang out in there and you want to make it super comfortable and cozy and inviting. You'll be playing games on that dining table. You'll be wanting to eat your dinner, breakfast, lunch, and dinner in there, and it'll feel like it wants to be visited rather than feeling like too precious. So in the hutch, it's going to be completely, it has glass windows. So you're gonna see all of your beautiful dinnerware, serveware, all of that. So making sure that that's really beautifully styled, I think is gonna really help the space, but then also it's what's around and on top of the hutch as well. I personally would add vases to the top, not too many, like one or two, just to keep it styled, but not too much. And like I said, having extra seating on the sides of the hutch could also make it feel kind of warm, collected, and comfortable to the space. So not just putting chairs around the table, but also putting them up against a wall somehow if it works in your space. And then what I would do with the other walls, I think I would leave the back wall blank. I also think adding a tapestry on the opposite wall or even a mirror with like a very skinny bar or sideboard could be helpful, but then I fear of getting too much furniture in there. It might feel a little bit too much. So doing something like a piece of art, like tapestry or even like a small bar cart could be very inviting as well. but I definitely wouldn't do too much, especially if the space is a little bit smaller like this one, because it can feel a bit heavy and cluttered, which can be repelling as well. Now, the more that I think about it, something you could do, because I do find this sort of dining room a bit challenging, because I feel like you teeter between, you know, too empty and too full. If you got a very narrow sideboard and you painted it the same color, if you color drenched it the same color as the walls, you kept it very narrow, maybe did some artwork, some sconces on top, I think that that could feel very elevated, extra storage for your drinkware, your glassware, barware, whatever. I do think that that could also look really good in this space, but you gotta be really careful because like I said, I feel like you could go a little too full in the space. The challenging part to this dining room is that there's no windows. Being that there's no windows, it does make it difficult to know what to put in the space. But I think a really good rule of thumb is, at least something that's worked for me personally, is leaving at least one wall empty, completely empty of anything. And I feel like this does help it feel a little bit more balanced. So for me, I would do the walls that are parallel to each other. I'd put the hutch on one, artwork, maybe a sideboard credenza. I think I would wait to see if I would do that after having the hutch and the dining table placed in here. Now we're working with the hutch, like we know a hutch is going in here. Otherwise, that's the only reason why I keep bringing up the hutch. But I would get the hutch in there, I would get the dining table in there, and I think this is where you could really let the space tell you what it needs, and if it's feeling too full, if it's feeling too empty, and you could add in some more. But just looking at it and kind of getting a visual for now, hutch, dining table, maybe a skinny kind of built-in sideboard that's color drenched with the color of the wall, maybe a mirror or artwork on the top with two sconces on either side. I think that that would be beautiful, but that back wall I would leave completely empty personally. Maybe you could do like two chairs, maybe some artwork, but I fear that it's gonna start feeling too cluttered in there and too full. So I would definitely need to see what it feels like when you have, you know, a couple pieces in there. Or you could scratch the sideboard idea, the built-in sideboard, and just do artwork, maybe a couple extra dining chairs. But again, I just really think you gotta get in there. You gotta kind of start your foundation, start with your lighting, start with your furniture that's gonna go in there, the main furniture, dining table, dining chairs, a hutch if you have one going in there, then feel it out. And I think that this is exactly why I say take your time when building a home, because it takes time. It takes time to get to know your style. It takes time to get to know how you feel in a space. It could feel too cluttery. It could feel, you just need to know how you feel in the space. If it feels too empty, easy. Go ahead and add the sideboard, a mirror, some artwork. Only you're gonna know if you're like a minimalist or a maximalist. I think that this is a really good way to start this dining room and to really get a good flow and make it feel inviting and comfortable. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know what you would do on the walls, because I'm not gonna lie, it's a challenge looking at this space, knowing I have a hutch and two other empty walls, what to do. But I do think that paneling is going to really help with filling in the space as far as the empty walls. But I wanna know your thoughts. What would you do on the wall? Should we do the hutch on the left wall or the right wall? I don't think I wanna do it on the back wall because that's just gonna be too much of a line of furniture, you know, coming straight in when you're looking in. I do think it's gonna be on the left wall or the right wall. Would you rather see it as a part of the first impression, or would you rather walk in and be like, oh, there's more to the space? Let me know your thoughts. I hope that you enjoyed this virtual design episode. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in a couple days with another. Bye.
I would say we were good together.